Welcome, everyone, to the Win Now podcast, hosted by Deborah Byrd, founder and CEO of Plug and Play SM.
I am so excited for today's show, so let's go.
And then myself, Todd Bookspan, founder of Win by Noon. My kids were flying sharks at the YMCA, and I was sitting out there. I was the goofy person on the phone taking loan applications out next to the pool. But I was there. I was paying attention. My clients knew what I was doing, so I was transparent with them.
But I will say, even year after year with having a lot of practice with this, I've just had to adjust that I'm not going to be at my A game during the 2.5 months when it's summer because of the stopping and starting. That's what's more difficult is the switch hitting of like you're in the zone and then, your alarm goes off and it's time to take a kid to a workout.
Welcome to another episode of Win Now. We are going to talk about performance mode versus summer mode. What are you busy parents doing to stay in business while actually running a family? Because life is busy and we all talk about this. I talk about winning by noon. I talk about being super productive. But what if you are a stay-at-home dad, a stay-at-home mom? What if you're a working mom, a working dad? How are you going to win this? Because the bottom line is it's not as easy. I am Todd Bookspan, the founder of Win by Noon, and I am joined by my co-host, founder and CEO of Plug and Play SM, but the mother of 4 people, all teenager-ish.
Yeah, from 13 to 16.
Yeah. So
the solution is OnlyFans.
That's a great way. All right, this is a wrap, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Just kidding.
Thanks for joining us. No, but we were talking about it that you and I are so fortunate. We get to interview top producers. We get to interview coaches. And they always talk about that you have to win the morning to win the day. You have to really be super productive. And you are a perfect example, right? You're running a business, a super successful business, and you've also got to be mom, and you've got a husband who's in the mortgage business and he's got to work too. And you guys have to manage this with 4 kids. And I think all the time that people run into this. One of the people in my group coaching program who's consistently 5 loans a month. So again, doing really well. And his wife has a full-time job that's taxing. And so I loved it. He did his video over the week and I look and there's his kid sitting there to work while he's doing his video. And he's got a responsibility as the primary parent and he still has to win in business as well as winning in life.
I used to feel guilty when they would, because summertime, all their friends are going on vacation or have different events that they're doing. And they're like, Mom, can we go to the trampoline park? Mom, revolving door. And I've now just learned that it's setting a good example of being disciplined with your time and honoring the commitments for yourself, that this is what helps feed the family, takes care of the family. But I just couldn't help that as I'm listening to Coach Bill Hart talking about performance mode versus summer mode, how don't just go into summer mode and just write the summer off. You still need to be like capitalize on this market and be diligent with your time and win by noon. And I'm like, you know what? Not only is it summertime where the schedules are wonky, but if you do have a lot of kids that don't drive yet and they all have to be at things at different times. And oh, by the way, it's also when we shove all the dentist cleanings and orthodontist and physicals because of back to school stuff. And sometimes you just have to either get up a little bit earlier or it forces you to be super focused, almost like what you talk about before you go on vacation mode, whatever principle or law that's called, where you like
Parkinson's law, right? Where time.
Yeah, you're like a time ninja.
Expand to fill the time available.
But I will say, even year after year with having a lot of practice with this, I've just had to adjust that I'm not going to be at my A game during the 2.5 months when it's summer because of the stopping and starting. That's what's more difficult is the switch hitting of like you're in the zone and then, your alarm goes off and it's time to take a kid to a workout. And then you get back. So it's that interruption that we don't realize, all those little interruptions. If you weren't super disciplined with your time already, like it just is a huge time killer.
Multitasking isn't just that, it's switching, right? Your brain is switching from activity to activity. And here's the way that I did it for me. And maybe this will be helpful. And then you can talk about how you do it for you. Some people have heard the story. When I started in the mortgage business, I was a stay-at-home dad and I was getting my MBA at night. And so I had 2 nights a week where I had 4 hours of class. I had homework, group projects, and I had started in the mortgage business. And so I was the primary caregiver of my kids. I had 2 daughters at the time. Giselle hadn't been born yet. Tara was practicing law full time. She was a quote unquote part-time attorney, but that meant she was only working like 50 hours a week instead of 80 hours a week. And And so I had to figure out how to do my job. So I wasn't the win by noon guy back then. I was just literally dropping Emmy. I was the one of two parents that was the last parents on the playground. I'm pushing Emmy on the swings, or we're throwing the ball. And then she's grabbing my leg, and I'm limping over to Robin, the teacher, for her to peel Emmy off my leg. And then I would zoom down the street. Luckily, the mortgage company was close. I'd get all my stuff done, and then I'd be out the door at 2 o'clock to go pick up the kids. And ironically, that didn't change. Even later on, as I was becoming the win by noon guy, that's actually when I created Win by Noon. I was still driving Giselle to school, and she didn't want to get out of the car till 8:29 and walk up right at 8:30 when she had to walk in. And I would zoom off. I would sit there, do my Win by Noon activities. And then I was still the guy who picked the kids up from school most days. Tara was then running the mortgage team, and she was sitting at the desk and plugged in and working all day. And I still had the ability to jump in the car. And so for me, what it became was, okay, if I have those other things, how do I schedule those in first? We talked on the last episode about the pitfalls of people in why they're not winning right now. And I said, you got to put the big rocks in first. So for me, that could have been a field trip. My kids would get mad because I was so loud on the bus taking loan applications on the field trip. But I was like, well, if you would have sat next to me.
No, you were not
Oh, yeah.
taking apps on the bus.
Yeah, that's embarrassing, but it's true. I had this headset that came out of my ear, and had like this thing, and I was just loud. Whoa, Deborah, okay. But I said, hey, if you guys
As they're singing the wheels on the bus go round, or nine.
If you would have sat next to me and talked to me, then I wouldn't have been able to take a loan application. And it didn't
Or if
stop.
we didn't have cell phones, then you wouldn't have even been in that situation.
It's bad. But so long story long, I think for me, I just built the things around it. Because again, I hate to say it, I don't know too many salespeople who are selling all day for 8 hours. And so what I think is, if you got an orthodontist appointment coming up on Thursday, is how do you make sure that you schedule the other activities you have to do around it as a parent? I went to swim practice. My kids were flying sharks at the YMCA, and I was sitting out there, same thing. I was the goofy person on the phone taking loan applications out at next to the pool, but I was there. I was paying attention. And my clients knew what I was doing, so I was transparent with them. They actually were digging it, right? My stay-at-home mom friends was one of my biggest basis for business. But I think, and again, you're living it now. So again, I'm past this, right? My kids are older, got a grandkid, but I don't have those responsibilities of day to day like I did when I was a parent. But for me at the time, it was scheduled. Be aware of those things, right? Because those fell on me even when we were both doing business later, and then schedule around it so that I could do them. And then what I would change now is I was probably on the phone talking to clients while I was driving through, taking the kids in the car. I probably would have actually now engaged in better conversation with them when I pick them up from school, and instead of being like, quiet guys, I got to quick call this realtor. But I did build my life around those things. Now I would put up better protections. I'd be like, sorry, I'm out of pocket from 2 to 3 when I was picking up the kids and driving them home. I would have just stayed off the phone. Note to all you parents, your kids are watching. That was one of my failures as a parent. But that would be my way of doing it. How would you respond to it? Because you were the one who's like, hey, I think this is harder than you think, Todd.
I was thinking when we were having the call with Bill is there's theory and then there's what you really do. And what I really do is I look at the big rocks for every week based off the month. And I know this at the start of the year. I've done a lot better job with making sure I don't overcommit in the summer, because there's a lot of different conferences we can go to. And sometimes if I'm going to conferences, then I'll bring half the kids with me. This year I didn't bring them to Forward, but the year before I did, and they were super stoked because the NBA Summer League was going on and they saw AI Iverson in the building. Yeah, except
Philadelphia 76
anyway.
home of LeBron James 2027.
But that's where I start, is with the big rocks. And then I also had to give myself permission that sometimes the webinar or the class or the Zoom is going to happen at a Starbucks or in a lobby somewhere or in my car, because I'm in between. But I always make sure to schedule it where I'm maximizing the time where I can. That way I can be present when I'm picking them up. Or that's what I call the new wealth, Todd, is when you actually can mow your yard because you enjoy it and you want to. You may also have a mowing service, but to be able to pick up your kids and be present, that's the real wealth right there. Because I am grateful that I can work from home and I can be present with them, and what an honor it is to be able to be busy with what I'm doing, but also be able to run and go get them when there's a lot of kids who maybe can't do the camp because they don't have a parent that works from the house that can do the rides because they're at an office all day. So it's just giving yourself permission to have less than perfect conditions sometimes, and that it's still okay. And what are the most important things that need to get done while not jamming your summer and overcommitting.
I love that. I love that you said that's the new wealth. And I think that's going to be a highlight of my day when I go back and I sit in my planner, because I think that's it, right? That's where you're in sales, right? People who are in sales or own their own company, people who listen to this, that's where you've won the lottery. You actually have the choice to build the life that you want. And yes, you've got to do the transactions, you got to build the customer base, you got to be able to get to the point where you can do it. Again, some of you are like, you guys are jerks. I'm sitting in my office 8 hours a day and I'm just dialing the phone all day. Good for you for doing that. It's there, you do hit that point where you've earned that right, Deborah, to do that. And I think that, again, your followers, the people who follow you, know you, hire you to do a webinar, they're okay with it. They know that you're the mother of four. They know it's the summer. And I would say, I recently heard it called separation season, right? That, hey, this is the season that real estate agents, loan officers are sitting at the beach. I met with a realtor and they said, oh yeah, all my clients are in Greece right now. I'm like, yeah, but that's a good problem to have. Like they say, oh yeah, there's no market in this part of California until after Labor Day. There's no one's buying. They're all on vacation. And I thought, gosh, you know what? That is separation season. So those of you who are saying, well, I don't have the ability to do this, that's great. You have the ability to work harder and outwork the people who are taking a little bit more flexibility and building in flexible time. I think in the middle, I think where the real pros have an opportunity is you've got an opportunity to say, how do I do both? Not instead of, but and how can I make sure I get all of my activities I need to get done and still go sit at the pool this afternoon with my kids after 3 o'clock? How can I make sure that I actually follow up on all those clients I told I would follow up and still be able to go see whatever the Odyssey with my kids on Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock and not have people feel bad that I turned off my phone for 3 hours? I think that's the opportunity. I think that's the superpower that people can figure out. And I know that you're doing a great job of doing it. Probably not perfect. You did mow your lawn at 5:30 this morning, which I still can't believe it that you're doing that. I love it. We're going to do an episode in the future on different types of lawn care services, because Deborah is an expert, of course, at that as well as everything else she.
I think I'm going to start a business.
Yeah,
that AI can't replace. And I'll have my crew. That's why you have a lot of kids. It's called, in fact, my son was like, I can't wait to be a parent. It seems so easy to be a parent because you just have your kids do everything. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. I was like, it is the law of leverage. So it's good that you learned that, boss. And his name is Boss. But I'm like, you know how much time I'd have back and how much money and all the things I could do? But I just laughed at, he was like, it must be so easy. Whoa, it's not easy.
That would have been great to be a fly on the wall of that conversation. But I think it's true. So then how do you approach that? So you said you started at the beginning of the year, but here we are mid-year. Someone already feels like they're in the chaos of this. They are trying to run their sales organization for themselves, their personal disciplines, and they're just looking at next week. Like, how do you coach them to make sure, one, that they get the activities done, two, that they are present when they're there with the kids, and then three, if there's any scripting that they need to do to people around them?
Well, I will say it's not like that was all done without sacrifice. At this point, if you're looking at your next week, then maybe the law of leverage, we're being able to hire help or hire summer. Sometimes in previous summers, we've had high school kids that would help with some of the rides because we don't have family or parents local to be able to help with that. But where in your business could you either maybe you haven't trained someone well enough and you're hoarding and you just think you have to do it. But if you don't have training, like you don't even have that time in place, it's looking at what are the things that must be done every day for the business to continue to thrive. So the on business time versus in the business time. If you don't have clarity of what those things are, then that makes it even harder to know and prioritize of which days of the week you're going to schedule them when and how much time to allow. That was my biggest challenge, is I did not give myself enough time on certain tasks. And it wasn't until I adopted the Win by Noon system where I was like, wow, my judgment of time and what I can get done is terrible. Or I went way too long on maybe this discovery call because I was really enjoying the conversation. And now it just cost me this. This is why I have to be diligent with only allowing for 30-minute discovery calls, not an hour and a half, just because the conversation's going well. But then also there was times where once I put my kids down, like you've heard me say, my think time is in the bath, or that's when I'm working on the business and catching up after they've gone to bed. Is just, I would sacrifice sleep time. And when I was building and grinding, guys, I had a 3, 2, 1-year-old and a newborn, and there wasn't a whole lot of sleep. And they were all dependent on me. And my husband was coaching at the time. It was literally all on me doing, at the time, sales. And I had to grind. There wasn't the luxury and the wealth of being able to just kick my feet up and maybe go to a movie. I didn't have, because of the season that I was in. And I understood the sacrifice to be able to achieve what I really wanted was going to take discipline. And it may mean saying no to the things that I want that could feel good, but it was for the greater good of where I wanted to be by the time my kids were at this point in life. So it doesn't come without struggle.
Yeah, I love that. I love you said it's a season that we're in, right? I think that for all of you listening, and again, you have to hear it. It's how do you support each other, right? Because again, Jordan's off coaching and you're probably going, oh, I can't believe you're coaching. And he's probably going, yeah, but you're in sales. And I'm sure the conversations. And so I would encourage you
Oh,
to
they weren't quite like that. It was a little ugly at times, Todd.
but I understand that, right? Because that's the same conversations that Tar and I had. And then I think it's just one of those things where you have to, again, those of you who have a significant other, you've got to openly communicate, hey, here's what it's going to look like for this period of time, and be okay having that conversation with your kids. Like we did that when I wasn't doing loans when COVID came along. And Tar's running the mortgage team. And she's first off, like, we're not going on our 30th anniversary trip to Spain. I'm like, heck, we are. We're still going. And then she's like, oh, and you need to start doing mortgages again. I'm like, dude, I don't do mortgages. I'm running Win by Noon. And she's like, actually, you're doing mortgages and we're not going to Spain. So it was a hard conversation. But when COVID became something, we worked 7 days a week for a month straight. I had this built at like a war room with every client I was talking to on a Post-it note around the room and what we were working on. And Tara, an assistant, and I over the next 2 years did almost 800 loans. And it was a lot of fun. We had to have conversations with the kids too. Everyone else, they're all their friends. They're all hanging out with their families, watching movies, eating popcorn because they couldn't go to work. And we were working our tails off and it was great financially. But it's anytime you have to work hard, even if it's when there's no good finances and you're really trying to dig in to grow, that's again, part of what happened to me. I hit a point after the financial crisis when I was flat broke for the second time and negative $1 million net worth. I'm like, I got to work hard to dig myself out of this hole. And that meant I was probably going to be out a night or two trying to pursue realtor business at some type of event. And I was going to maybe have to go early and go to coffee with real estate agents. I was really trying to figure the business out. And we just had to have open communication about that, or we probably wouldn't have survived and thrived through that situation. And so I think that's the key. I love you use the word season, but just recognize what's the communication that's required around that and the mindset. And then when you get to the end of the week and you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't get it all done. Does that happen often or at all?
I would say it usually comes from mismanagement of time, or I would say it's less and less, but there's still some imperfect weeks where I'm like, did I need to spend that much time in the yard? My obsession of certain tasks where I'm like, because that's what I want to do. I'm learning about it. And so I want to go practice and I want to go do. And so I'll avoid the things that then just keep piling up. And I'm like, no, I just know myself well enough where if I don't say no or ask for help. So I've gotten a lot better at asking for help, where Jordan does all the cooking. He does all the grocery shopping. My kids do the laundry. So I've learned the law of leverage, but also rest. I was never great at giving myself time to just unplug and relax and not always be go. And I will tell you, that's probably done the most for just my overall energy and mood of not being crabby to the people under the roof of my home, where Jordan would say a lot of times, oh, I hear you on these podcasts or webinars and you give so much energy to everybody else. And then when everything turns off, you're like, ah. And I'm like, you're right. That's not fair to them. I shouldn't be on my A game with everybody else and then Debbie Downer to them. So I've really been intentional on carving out those times. And we go on walks every night. I try not to point out other people's yards, but I have been doing that lately. But the reality is I don't always have perfect weeks. And it's then, okay, let's look at what you can control and let's set up the next week. What got in the way? How do we make sure it doesn't get in the way the following week? And what must get done by noon each day for the next week so that it doesn't end up becoming this snowball effect that gets bigger and bigger.
So here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's kind of the common theme that we've had since one of the first episodes where we talked about ideal week. We talked about the ideal week as a pitfall in our last episode. And ultimately, it's no different, right? When you hit this season, and we're talking about the summer season specifically for parents like you running around, is you have to understand, what does the ideal week look like? What is the minimum activities that I have to do? So minimum viable activities in order to run my business so that I don't fall behind in separation season, right? You just want to keep pace, I think, is what I would encourage people to, or at least know what that looks like for you. And then be good to yourself, right? At the end of the week, if you don't quite get there, that's okay. Figure out, well, what can I do differently this week in order to ensure that I don't repeat what happened last week. It made me think of when you said I just unplug and give myself time to recover, the entrepreneurial time system from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. He has true off days where you literally don't talk about business. You're not supposed to think about business. And there's people who are like really diehards and they actually have, well, I guess I kind of have one, an off day phone where literally it's not even a phone that anyone can get a hold of me. So even if it's to protect you from yourself, like those human blinders, literally the people have a different phone where that way there's just nobody on there that no one can get a hold of them, and they can actually just be peaceful and just be present with whomever they're with and recover from probably a pretty hard week.
The last thing I'll say is I had to learn how to let go of certain things. I think that was like the joke on when I went from 2 kids to 4, which mind you, I wasn't supposed to be able to have any children. So the joke was on me every time we found out. But I used to be that mom that was obsessed with like all the Legos had to go in the Lego box. All the action figures had to go in the action figure box. All the cars in the cars. And I just learned that once you have 4, I'm like, are we all dressed? Does everybody have shoes on? They may not even be matching shoes. It doesn't matter. It's okay. And we're out the door. You just learn to let go of some of the things that you're holding on to. And for me, it was control probably, but it's just freeing. The more that is what the discipline and the ideal week allows you to feel, is that freeing sensation of, okay, I did what I needed to do. Now I can actually breathe. Whereas before it was like I was so uptight and everything in my pantry was organized with all the labels the right way. And
I love it. So it just, again, last thing, it makes me think that if you know what the minimum you have to do is, and that could just be get shoes on your kids, even if they don't match, and you can accomplish that, then you can continue to move forward with positive momentum, giving your best every week. And so I hope that this little insight into kind of the pushback that we both get to being so schedule driven, I'm hoping this was helpful for people, that whether you've got kids at home or whether just other things that are happening to you based on the time of year that you're listening to this, I hope that you are able to take something away to make your next week a little less chaotic and make sure that you get a little bit more of the actionable items done. And you can feel good at the end of the week when you're sitting in a bath like Deborah, or when you're sitting on a beach like me, whatever that looks like for you.
just make sure when you're taking the bath, you're dunking an Oreo at the same time.
Yep, I heard that's what you do. That's amazing. That is amazing.
Okay, guys, now all you have to do is win now.
Thanks, everyone.